Welcome to the Science for Sport podcast, where we dive into stories and insights that drive peak performance. Join us as we uncover the secrets behind the science of success. Here's your host, Richard Graves.
Hello and welcome to the Science for Sport podcast with me, Richard Graves. Each week, we look at how different aspects of innovation can affect sports performance. From technology to training methods, strength and conditioning to psychology. Well, recently, Catapult, the global leader in sports performance analytics, launched its Vector 8 system. What is it? How does it work? And how can it shape the face of professional sports moving forward? Well, let's find out the answers to these questions and more now with their Vice President of Engineering, Jacques Groenewald.
Unlocking sports science to push the limits of human potential. This is the Science for Sport podcast.
Well, it's a warm welcome to Catapult's VP of Engineering, one of the lead designers of this system, Jacques Groenewald. Welcome along to the show. It's great to have you on.
Great, thanks very much. Glad to be here.
I imagine the last month has been full of excitement, bit of a whirlwind with the launch of the Vector 8 system. It's clearly the culmination, Jacques, of many years of hard work and research and development. And for our listeners, before we dive into this new system, just give them your background, how you came to be at Catapult and the journey along the way.
Yeah, sure. So I am from studied electronics. It just seemed like the obvious thing to do at the time because I enjoyed nothing more than playing with microchips and coding things. So that was just what I wanted to do for fun. Kind of did that for started my career in semiconductors, sort of helping out people with their designs, and then went into a big data company in mining. But where I think I really got into product development was joining a small company in South Africa that did measurements for industrial applications using lasers and ultrasound systems, which then shortly after I joined got bought over by a massive global company, was at the time 40th largest company in the world, and they shipped pretty much the entire product line off to China. And so within sort of 6 months of joining, ended up in Shanghai, starting a new R&D team, moving the whole supply chain, building a new factory, and essentially setting up the function there in China, which was a huge experience. Like at the time, I was sort of doing double roles of being the principal engineer as well as the product manager, which creates some interesting arguments with yourself along the way, but it was good. And then after that, we decided to go somewhere else, and we just decided to pick our own spot. So came to Melbourne, did a bit of product management in a software environment, and got a bit too technical too quickly because it was fun. And then when the Catapult role came up, I remember just going to my wife saying, remember when we left China and we said there is going to be a role in Australia that is hardware with manufacturing that happens in Asia, that's going to require a profile a bit like mine, and it's going to be way more interesting than industrial measurement systems. I was like, look at that. And I was absolutely stoked to see the role advertised. It was kind of a concept that I hoped would exist a few years before, and just been loving it ever since. Just the customers we've got, the space we're in is just absolutely fascinating.
Clearly, you're well-travelled, vastly experienced. How many years have you been involved in this sector?
In product development or in sports technology?
Across both.
So product development, when would that have been? We're looking at coming up to 20 years now, so 19 years, I think. That's a scary thought. And then
time flies.
It sure does. And then the world of sports was really since I joined Catapult. I basically joined not knowing a great amount about it, but it's fascinating once a field grabs you to this extent. How easy it is to learn when you're having fun. So about 5 years in this space.
See, I love the fact that you say how easy it is to learn when you're having fun, because when it comes to technology, I'm probably like most of our listeners. know how to use it, no idea whatsoever how it actually gets all the information and data that we need. So let's focus in then on this Vector 8 system. What exactly is it, and how does it differ from previous Catapult technologies?
Yeah, so I think the thing that for me really stands out, and I think what I probably identified early on in my time at Catapult, is that I think a lot of professional technologies go through a curve where they're professional technologies made for professionals with time and skills. And so whether you apply that to the original Wi-Fi systems that people installed in offices, whether you apply that to DJ gear, right? You assume someone knows what they're doing on it. Or like there's so many cameras for people doing film. There's a certain expectation of like, yeah, people will work it out because it's their job. And I think what I just picked up at Catapult really quickly is that there is a huge scope for us to bring a more consumer-like experience over the entire thing, to just make the ease of use, the simplicity of it all way, way simpler. So I think like the areas where Catapult had a super strong foundation is in everything around data quality, everything around the credibility of the sports science and the testing and the validity of data that we provide. But I think what we try to do here is to say, right, what happens if someone wants the same value out of this, but they want to spend a lot less time on it? What if they have different things to do, even just get home at a more reasonable hour? And so that was a big part of the inspiration for the entire project. And I think like sometimes you start talking about like, oh, it's all about workflows and time saving, and people go, oh, like people expect that. But I think the impact it has on people's days and their lives every day is something that we can't take for granted. So I think that's definitely the area that for me stands out most. I think we got a lot of inspiration from things like modern networking equipment. Like imagine back in the day, you would get the Cisco people out and they would come in with an army of people and they'd be up in the roof and installing things and no one would know how the thing works. And in today's time, you can buy consumer grade stuff off the shelf, you plug it in, you have a little app, click, 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 and the system just works. And it's much simpler. And so most of us at home can run much more complicated systems because of it, and we get the benefits of it every day. So that's something we really wanted to bring into this generation. But I think the other thing that we realized really quickly, to go to the other side, is that it's very easy to do things with data after it's been captured. We had to invest in making those decisions available as it happens. And that was another big inspiration that required us to do a lot of work, really, to sort of change a few paradigms, to go, in the past, things would sort of run forward and then afterwards you can slice it up all differently. Not anymore. Now you can do live a lot more things that you would previously have only been able to do post a session. And so that I think is the other very exciting thing. There's a lot of other bits and pieces that we'll probably cover during the next hour or so, but that's definitely the highlights from my point of view.
Yeah, from the perspective of professional athletes, professional sporting organisations, this is the real selling point of this system, isn't it? Speed, efficiency, real-time decisions, so that you've got instant feedback.
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and like it's lots of little things, lots of small things that add up to this. In terms of speed, like we've invested a ridiculous amount of hours and effort and technology into making the downloads happen incredibly quickly. We've had to build our complete own custom technology for it, and it's looking phenomenal at the moment. And like essentially what it allows us to do is just get the data out there as quickly as possible. And I know there's different definitions of getting the data out, but when we say we're getting all the data out in that time, we literally mean everything, including 100 hertz inertial data. This is not summaries. This is not, just the stuff that gets the job done. Like we do that too, but that's even faster. But when we say it, we're getting it off fast, we're referring to absolutely everything that we've measured.
And I'm going to want you to explain that in more detail as we go on through this podcast. But in terms of what is tangible, what athletes, what the data analytics guys are going to see in terms of hardware? Because let's be honest, for most athletes using it, they don't see the interpretation of the data analytics as their responsibility. There'll be specialists that deal with that. What are they going to see? Is it going to be like previous devices where you wear a vest and there's just a little GPS system tucked in the back of it between your shoulder blades, or is this something different?
So from an athlete's point of view, it's really very similar. We've stuck to a very similar form factor. I think at first, if someone looked at it, they'd go, "Oh, this is almost the same as the previous generation. We've packed a lot more power in it," but a lot of that's sort of invisible behind the scenes. I think the sports scientist would be the one that experiences the most there. Now, we've got other developments in play that will work on a few comfort things that we'll discuss separately as they come out. But from an athlete's point of view, it's very similar. Like even the same vest that they would be wearing today that integrates heart rate, it would be the exact same one. It just clips in the same way. So it's going to have very minimal disruption on those athletes in the short term. The real area where it's going to be visibly different is going to be for those practitioners that use the data afterwards. They'll pick up things like the LEDs maybe look a bit slicker and has a bit more of a modern interface and everything, but like that's not the stuff that for them would really matter.
Okay, then walk us through the key features of this Vector 8 technology, and what precisely is it that makes it such a game changer when it comes to monitoring data?
Yeah, so few of the bits. So definitely on the live side. So let's start with live. So I think the first one is that in the past we would require someone. The typical setup for someone would be you walk out, you've got your devices, everyone has them on, everyone goes and does their thing. But now you have a camping table, typically a laptop, typically quite a strong laptop, potentially a gaming laptop with a power extension running all the way to you, and you'll be working away at it. So that setup we have changed now to a point where, and then of course next to it you would have your tripod with your receiver that collects all the data. Now the next thing that happens here is that we have consolidated all of that into the receiver. So our receiver now is a complete computer that does all of that work that you'd previously have to do. So for people who want to do a permanent installation, they would literally have that receiver installed on a pole with power running to it. And essentially athletes can run out anytime and it would always be recording. It's just an always on system with no real intervention required in the process. So I think that is the one super exciting thing. And even for teams traveling or someone that doesn't have a fixed installation, you can walk out with that tripod with your receiver, have that there, no camping table, no laptop, and get the job done. Now, from a user interface perspective, we're shifting all of this into the iPad. And this is on a one-to-one basis. You would imagine this is just the iPad that someone's running and it's just doing something very similar to what you used to do on the Windows computer in the past. But where it gets really interesting is at the point where multiple coaches start doing multiple things and interacting with each other. So we've really democratized how many people can help during a coaching session. So depending on the sport, someone can be working with the forwards and someone could be working with the backs and someone can be doing rehabs on the side. And all those people can sort of see the same data. Every edit that gets done gets sort of brought together and there's that single version of the truth that really pulls it all together for someone. So we think that is very exciting.
Yeah, from a professional organisation's perspective, one of the things we said right at the top that was one of the great advantages of this system was speed. Well, if suddenly you can have multiple aspects of your staff all tapping into the same data, all extracting what they need, then suddenly when we're talking about injury prevention, rehab, whatever aspect it might be, all of this can happen a lot quicker, can't it?
Correct. And even someone could be completely remote, not even there, and still be watching the session. So when you're on the road and not all the staff have traveled with you, someone could be visualizing that live session and be giving feedback even at the same time because of the way that it's been connected. So it brings in a lot of new workflow options to get things done a lot faster and just have more minds sort of working on the same challenges at the same time. So the other thing that sort of adds to this as well is, as part of getting that live data engine of ours running on this receiver, what we've done as well, and this is one of those very nerdy behind the scenes things that isn't going to make the sales deck, but I'm very excited by this, and I think it's going to have a big impact.
Be honest, you love this bit, don't you?
Oh yeah. So we were able to completely rethink how we process data live, and so in the past you'd sort of run in one direction and get all the data bits, and it all would sort of accumulate as you go, and that's just how the technology worked at the time. What we've done is basically taken the same technology that allowed something like the PlayStation 5 to render entire worlds and build them up without a loading screen. We've taken that same technology and put it into our receivers so that we can now interrogate data live in any angle from it. So if someone changes a period, if someone swaps out an athlete somewhere, we can now respond to those changes live. And that is incredibly exciting. That allows us a lot more things. And so at first, it's that simple. It's like you change your things on the fly and you see it the way you're going to see it post. But I think where it gets even more exciting is in the next phases of this, where we start being able to do much more interesting analysis. Like, how do we start bringing your post reporting into the live environment? And like one of the bits that like, imagine setting up and saying, tell me when this happens, tell me when that happens, tell me when that happens, and just being able to get all that thinking and that alerting done for you, so you don't have to, especially for someone like an NFL team that has 100 plus athletes going on at a time, you can't keep an eye on everything all the time. Being able to automate those things and get it fed to you so you can manage by exception, we think is very powerful. But yeah, the thing that made that possible is really having a live engine that is running literally, like, you could just interrogate it from every angle, which was not an option in the past.
Yeah, and this really feeds into Catapult's stated mission of unleashing potential and optimizing performance of athletes, doesn't it? You mentioned NFL teams there. It's my understanding that the American football organizations is where this system is being rolled out initially. As we progress across 2025, it'll be rolled out across different sports around the world as well.
That's right. Yeah, so we're starting in American football. They're coming back from their season into their training camps shortly in a few months. So that's the first place that'll get it. And then sort of as the sporting season starts around the world, we're going to be rolling right into them. So soccer or football in Europe will be getting it, rugby will be getting it, and then all the way back to the Australian sports with Australian league football coming back into next year. So pretty much every sports season at this point is going to be a continuation of that launch, and every phase of the two will come with special optimizations that will make the product really special for those sports. So it's not like it's just like we're really customizing it for those environments, so it really does what they need it to do.
Yeah, that's the other impressive feature of Vector 8, isn't it? You mentioned American football teams there. Well, when they return to pre-season training camp, they can have anywhere up to 100 different athletes on the field. Well, this system can cater for up to 120 individuals at any one time. And in terms of geography, it has a tremendous range as well.
Yeah, that's right. So we have really gone out of the way to make those ranges much more flexible. So everything from radio frequencies, being able to cover larger areas, even things like working in different RF environments, having multiple frequency bands that automatically can be switched between, gives us a lot of robustness around certain conditions. And yeah, just the bandwidth that comes with those bits of flexibility, just from a technical perspective, allows us to say 120 athletes really isn't a problem to run. So Yeah, American football is a big market for us, so of course that is something that we always keep top of mind when we design, and it means that everything for other sports, in terms of at least number of athletes and bandwidth, is becomes a much simpler problem to solve at that point.
Yeah, and again, we've spoken to people from the NFL, officials high up that talk about how they collate data, share it with other sports, and it works both ways. And this is going to be the same with this system, no doubt, as well. And when you talk about speed and efficiency, we live in an era when the in vogue thing is AI, artificial intelligence, and this is no different here as well. Tell us a little bit how you've incorporated that into the system in order to optimize its performance.
Yeah, so AI is something that we've been doing for a while actually, and so what's interesting is that a lot of our sports algorithms have traditionally already used things like machine learning, things like counting bowling deliveries or like multiple different algorithms like that. But I think what's interesting on this new generation is that we now have incredibly powerful AI capabilities right on our receiver. And so what that means is that we can now start doing very complex calculations with AI that starts going not just how many deliveries did one bowler bowl on that one wearable, but what happens across that whole team? What happens when we have that full data set together? What sort of insights can we get from it? And then further than that, the AI capabilities of this, the hardware we're releasing is way more powerful than we'll be using on day one. We've really got a whole generation worth of work ahead of us just as we start discovering all these new interesting applications. Obviously, working with our video products is a very important part of this, and so the capabilities are there for us to do computer vision right on the edge with incredibly low latencies. And so we don't need, like, some of the applications from this, we don't even know what it is. So we're starting off by saying, okay, there's the stuff we know, there's the stuff we do. How do we make that more efficient? How do we bring it across? How do we, but we've got so many opportunities ahead of us with this. And especially as our products like Focus start coming closer and closer and people start doing things in more similar workflows and sort of crossing those boundaries, the more interesting the applications will get, and we can't even say what those will be at this point. We're just very excited to get there.
It strikes me, Jacques, from what you're saying, that this is a system that can handle massive quantities of data at any one time. I suppose if you're a coach or an athlete listening to this conversation, the obvious question is, how does it handle that data, and how is it able to interpret it into a fashion that's relevant to me?
Yeah, so this is one of those where let's think, how do I describe this without getting way too nerdy about it? So essentially, we're running a database live. It's all there. All the data's coming in. I think one of the biggest challenges we have is on the bandwidth side. How do you get everything over that wireless connection onto it? That is something that we already did a really good job at with Vector 7, but we've taken it another step further. So there's that component. The next bit then is, how do we capture that data in a reliable way and make sure that it's all there, always consistent? And we've made some really big advancements in that area as well. And there will be further features rolled out where we're going to start doing all sorts of things, like if there's a missed data point, we'll just go and get it over the air while it happens, even before you start downloading. So there's all that sort of stuff that's coming into the system at the same time. And then what I mentioned earlier about just the database that's incredibly flexible is, like, some of the one application that I can think of is, let's say sports scientist gets stuck speaking to someone upstairs and is running down, and some people are already running around. This could typically be lost data at that point. The system would actually already be recording that. And they would walk out with their iPad and just scroll back and say, actually, they started there. And so this is the sorts of things that just give you that flexibility to bring all the data to the front. Now, what we're doing as a sort of a next step, and as we're continuously optimizing it, is just making sure that we feed the right level of data at the right time. And I think it's already very interesting, but as we move forward and start doing more things real time and start slicing it up a little bit differently, I think where this is going to get super interesting is when our reporting that people know in the post analysis world and the analysis you do live. The aim is in the next year to have those lines sort of completely blurred to the point where they are no longer two separate things, where your reporting is actually running as you run your session. And you can say, how does this compare to last year? How does this compare to 2 weeks ago? Tell me when I'm hitting the same levels as I did before I was injured. All those sorts of interesting things. And so for the moment, like all the capabilities are there, but I think that is the thing we're working towards over the next year to say, when does that line disappear? Where post reporting and live is gone.
That in itself is the game changer, certainly professional sports, isn't it?
Yep.
Because it's narrowing down the time and therefore the margin for error, isn't it?
That's correct. Yeah, and even like just the capability of like being able to walk off that field and say to the head coach, this is what happened, and I've already compared it to before. You don't have to go away, do the analysis, run some spreadsheets and come back. You were able to actually run that analysis as the session was happening. You've got better insight right as it happens. You're able to give much more confident recommendations throughout the club. I think that is going to be one of the very, very interesting parts.
Okay, well, that immediately gets my attention because we spoke earlier in this conversation about this being a technology that was able to help injury prevention. You've just said there an example of something happening to an athlete. They're walking off and the data's already in the system before they get to the sideline, touchline, whatever you want to call it, on the playing surface. So let's go a bit deeper into this then. How does this technology enhance injury prevention and limit the time away from the sporting arena for any athlete?
Yeah, so I think the direction is similar to what we've done in the past. We've got our things like player load and everything, but like getting it more instantaneously available, getting it available as it happens, making sure the data quality is better and coming through more reliably. I think all of these things have a huge role to play in that environment. I think the other thing that gets very interesting is just our ability to do integrations. So it's another big thing that we are talking about as part of this launch, and we're going live with a couple of them as we go out the door. But specifically for things like injury prevention, like looking at integrations like our partner Arian, that we can have the insoles and actually get to that biomechanics level on top of that. And so getting that into your system is good. There is going to be ongoing work to start bringing that also into the live environment. And so what is right now things that can only happen after a session, we are planning, this is not day one stuff, this is over the lifetime of this generation, to start bringing that stuff in live. And I think that becomes a very interesting thing. And so when we're talking about this really being the backbone of the next generation of live infrastructure, this is really what we're talking about. Every startup coming out of university, every sports tech startup can also help their customers get the best value out of their products for injury prevention, for checking whether concussion possibilities are there, anything like that really. And so now we can start getting all of that knowledge from all of these different areas of research right into the system. And so we're starting with a few, but watch this space. I think it's going to evolve pretty rapidly. It's a very exciting part of this product.
How big a decision in the development of Vector8 was it to have a piece of software that is able to talk to third-party and partner systems and isn't exclusive to one design, one make, one model?
It was a very big consideration. I think at the moment there are so many interesting sports technology companies out there, and I've spoken to a lot of them over the last few years, and every single one of them has the same two challenges. how do you do this at scale?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I get this data live? How do I not wait until after the fact to plug in a USB cable or do a Bluetooth download to get to the data? And we've invested the last decade into building that infrastructure, and we believe we can really help them, and they can really help us in the process. So I think it's a really good partnership opportunity that Catapult has on that front. It's the investment we've made in our wireless technology is massive, and I think we've learned things that would take anyone else years to learn. I mean, we run this during game day in front of 100,000 people, and it's reliable. Getting it to that point is really hard, and being able to offer that and say, hey, it's just a quick integration and you can do that. So yeah, the first few will be sort of manually done, and then we're going to learn from them, and we'll get better and better documentation. And yeah, we look forward to when this starts really building up and going, wow, we're at a point where we've got, really broad range of partners. That's something that we're very excited about.
And to that end, I don't know if you are able to share examples, but as you say there, you've done testing in front of thousands of people and on thousands of athletes. What are some of the things that you came across and perhaps surprised you about Vector 8 that maybe you weren't expecting it to be able to produce and handle?
Yeah, so I think some of the things that I get the most excited about, and especially when we're talking about environments with 100,000 people and those tough conditions. We have had the opportunity to test this at very large games, not on athletes, but in the environment. We were able to get the tests, and the data quality was remarkably better than a previous generation. And I think what is interesting there, something that features in our marketing material as this is going out, is the body wave antenna that we've spoken about. And essentially what that does is it allows the antenna to work around the person wearing it. And so where typically if someone was facing the wrong direction, you would have those occlusions, and someone, if you're on the other end of the field, you'd have to go to the far end to get a signal. Now we're getting to a point where that signal actually comes through, and especially in tight corners and places, it got a lot easier. And we've had a couple of customers, some of the first beta customers used it, and that was one of the first remarks, is that the signal quality, especially in tight corners and difficult areas, was better than ever before. But yeah, we expect that for environments with game day, this is going to be able to take us to yet another level where it helps us become that's even more the standard for live game day environments.
And that's key, isn't it, for reputation, reliability, whereas previous systems, if you get to the very end of the signal, there might be tiny gaps in the data coming. If that's now not happening and you have a complete picture, again, whether it's optimizing performance, injury prevention, whatever aspects it might be, the sheer weight of data available, the reliability of it, the complete picture it builds optimizes the potential learnings for any athlete or organization.
Yeah, 100%. And the more you capture, and especially the more you capture live, the better decisions you can make on the spot. And that's really what we're all about.
Looking forward then, where do you see this going? I mean, you've said a few times, this is where I get excited because I get into the nerdy bit of it. From what you've already said to me, Jacques, there clearly is the potential for this to develop and expand further. It strikes me that what we know so far about this Vector 8 technology is only just the beginning.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to think that. I think the way we kind of talk about it is that this is really the launch pad for the next phase of Catapult. This is software features is something you build with your customers. Algorithms is something you build with your customers, and those take time. You want to make sure you get them right. You do them as those opportunities come up. But when it comes to the infrastructure system, the way it sets up, the way you manage it, the hardware itself, the data pipelines, these things have all been built to allow us to go to a completely different level, and much more democratized data, multiple people working on it, multiple athletes training in the same place, multiple sports teams using the same grounds, American football teams that can use indoor and outdoor seamlessly. Like those are all the things that were considered in the concepts of this. And as we start ticking off the little features that start getting those out, like I think that's something super exciting. And yeah, like the way we've built all of this is really with a way of getting value out fast and quick iterations. And now that the platform is there, people can expect updates multiple times a week. And what that means is just that the system will grow incredibly over the next year, and over the lifetime of the product of, say, 3 years or whatever, it's going to bring the software to another layer where, again, that's going to then say it's time for new hardware. And that'll allow new things again. So it's a very exciting cycle.
And it's always ever evolving. I just wonder if I can ask you to gaze into your crystal ball and look maybe 5-10 years down the line. Do you have any idea at the moment what the demands are going to be and how it's going to evolve, and in what way Catapult with its technology can adapt to that?
Yeah, I think if I had to place a bet at this point, I'd say that we're currently in a world where there are still lots of different data sources that are very hard to sometimes work with and pull together. And the amount of effort people do to massage this data into a way that is valuable from all these different sources is too much work, really. I think that is what is going to be at the crux of this, is those lines will become blurred. The systems will become more standardized. And I think this is where Vector 8 and 9 after that and so on, and everything we're building in our video space, just thinking of the sports organization as a whole, instead of saying this is the sports scientist, this is the video analyst, this is the head coach. So instead of having just really bringing it all together and taking away the manual work required to get to those insights. And it's amazing. I mean, like we can think of just our consumer products, how in the past we would have all these different things, and now it's just, oh yeah, it's just all there. You go into your email and then you go to your calendar and your drive is right. It happens so naturally. I think that's what we're likely to see.
You do realise that by mentioning 9 there, you've just sent the entire PR team into chaos, having only just got the information out for Vector 8.
I'm sure. I'll be honest. We're doing research and development on Vector 9 right now. The electronics team is done. They've got Vector 8 out the door. The software teams are still hard at work, but the electronics team is already working on Vector 9. It's very exciting.
It never stops, does it? Technology
really
never
doesn't.
sleeps, and neither does innovation. Just one final question. I wonder, throughout this conversation, we've spoken about professional athletes, professional organisations. Do we foresee a time and a scenario whereby youngsters playing sport might have access and be able to, I would guess, a slightly different version of this, so it's more relatable to them? Is that something that's on the horizon?
Yeah, so I think to start with, so Vector Core is a product we already have that runs in a lot of youth academies and so on. In fact, a lot of the technology we used in Vector 8 was proven in Vector Core. We actually built this stuff for Vector Core, and we built up for scale in that environment. So I think some of it's likely to filter down, some of it's likely to also filter up, the way that a lot of these things have in the case of Vector Core to Vector 8. I think there's a few things to work out. I think the workflows need to prove that they are super reliable, very easy. That consumer grade experience is something we need to really get right in order to do this. That's problem number one. I think the next thing is just going to be, how do we put a product in front of people that makes sense to them, that does not require a PhD sports scientist to review the data after every session? And I think that's more exciting challenges that we are very keen to explore over time. But I think the principles of Vector 8 allow us to think about that a lot more. So I can't speak for timing, but I think the short answer is yes, there's definitely that possibility.
It sounds like you and your team are going to be fairly busy.
A bit.
Listen, Jacques, I've enjoyed this conversation. I started it by being really interested in Vector 8 and wanted to find out more about it. I finished it, I have to admit, by being excited about it now as an amateur athlete myself. So it's been fantastic. Thanks very much for your time. We should tell everybody that if they want to find out more information regarding Vector 8, they can do so by going to catapult.com/Vector 8, and you must promise to stay in touch with us and keep us informed as the technology advances.
100%. Thank you very much. This has been fun.
Unlocking sports science to push the limits of human potential. This is the Science for Sport podcast.
Huge thanks to the VP of Engineering at Catapult, Jacques Groenewald, for taking the time out of his schedule to join us on this edition of the podcast and explain the workings of the new Vector 8 system. If what he had to say interests you, or you are just interested about finding out more regarding sports science generally, then you can do so by going to our website, www.scienceforsport.com. And if you've enjoyed this edition, please do feel free to share it with a coach, a colleague, an athlete, or a friend. Remember, the more downloads we can get, the easier it becomes for us to attract top-name athletes or professionals at the cutting edge of their field. Well, that is just about all for this show. I look forward to the next time we can get together and talk some more on the next edition of the Science for Sport podcast.
Subscribe to the Science for Sport podcast now, wherever you listen to your podcasts. For more insights, resources, and to join the Academy, visit scienceforsport.com and connect with us on social media by searching for @ScienceForSport. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.